Welcome to the FY25 Grants to Reduce Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking on Campus, known as the Campus Program Pre-Recorded Pre-Application Session. My name is Maria Cristina Pacheco Alcalá, and I am a Grant Management Specialist and member of the Campus Unit. The purpose of the pre-application information session is to highlight a few key points in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO. However, it is not intended to cover every aspect of the NOFO. Next slide. The agenda for this session is to cover the campus program description, federal award information, eligibility requirements, key submission information, application components, a section for the OVW Grants Financial Management Division, and tips for submission. All applicants are responsible for reading the FY 2025 Campus Program NOFO and the OVW NOFO Companion Guide to ensure that a complete application is submitted. OVW staff cannot comment on the quality of an applicant's proposed project or provide any information outside of what is included in the NOFO. However, Campus Unit staff will be available to respond to questions about the application requirements throughout the period that the NOFO is open. Please feel free to send questions to the campus mailbox at ovw.campus@usdoj.gov. You may find it helpful to have the campus NOFO in front of you as a reference point while viewing this information session. Now, we will begin describing the campus program. The campus program promotes a comprehensive and coordinated community approach that enhances victim safety, provides services and supports to victims, and supports efforts to hold offenders accountable. The funding supports activities that develop and strengthen trauma-informed victim services and strategies to prevent, investigate, and respond to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking on campus. The key thing to remember is that this grant funding focuses on the previously mentioned crimes. As such, your proposal cannot address bullying or general violence, as these issues fall outside the scope of this program. In addition, sexual harassment can only be addressed when it is used as an umbrella term for these crimes, such as in the context of your campus policy. Next slide. The campus program has 13 purpose areas. These are the areas of work for which you can utilize grant funds. You are required to select at least one purpose area and can choose more than one as it is relevant to the proposed project. We will not go over each one, but they can be found in the NOFO. Purpose areas 4, 6, 7, and 13 have additional considerations which will be discussed now. If you select Purpose Area 4, then several conditions are needed. You must allocate 20% of the grant funding to this purpose to provide direct victim services. This doesn't include outreach and training activities. Also, if victim advocacy services include providing legal services, then the legal services certification must also be submitted with the application. Purpose areas 6 and 7 cannot make up most of the budget or project activities, since the goal of the program is to provide comprehensive approaches to these crimes. These purpose areas cannot be the only selected purpose areas. Next slide. If your proposal includes item in Purpose Area 7, approval must be granted by OVW before purchasing these items, should the proposal be awarded. Therefore, you can include these costs in your application submission. Purpose Area 13 must implement restorative practices as defined in Section 40002A of the VAWA of 1994. Next slide. For FY25, OVW has two programmatic areas that are applicable to this notice of funding opportunity. Applicants are not required to address one or both priority areas. This is completely optional. Applications that fare well in merit review and substantially address one or more of the priorities listed below, to the extent consistent with the campus program, may receive priority consideration for funding. Number 1, measures to combat human trafficking and transnational crime, particularly crimes linked to illegal immigration and cartel operations that support safety and justice for trafficking victims who have also suffered domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and/or stalking. Number 2, projects to provide victim services, especially housing, and improve law enforcement response in rural and remote areas, tribal nations, and small towns that often lack resources to effectively combat domestic violence and sexual assault. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victims' safety, deter victims from seeking help, prevent physical or emotional healing, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Please reference page 19 of the NOFO and the NOFO Companion Guide for the list of these activities. We will not review them one by one. Instead, to assist you in submitting a solid application and developing victim-centered projects, we will review some of the areas that have caused applicants to receive point deductions during the application review process. Some common compromising victim safety issues included in applications are procedures or policies that fail to include conducting safety planning with victims. It is not enough to say that you will conduct safety planning with victims. You must also ensure that it is effective. A strong project will provide details of how safety planning is incorporated into response protocols, procedures, and policies, how and when safety planning is conducted with victims, what is discussed during the safety planning process, and the distinction between safety planning for domestic violence versus sexual assault versus stalking survivors. Project designs and budgets that fail to account for the accessibility needs of individuals with disabilities, with limited English proficiency, or who are deaf or hard of hearing. Peer reviewers usually deduct points from the project narrative and the budget for applications that do not include information and or designate funding for how applicants will make their services and or products accessible to individuals with disabilities, limited English proficiency, or those who are deaf and or hard of hearing. Please give this serious consideration when completing your application. Lastly, failing to develop policies regarding confidentiality of information, informed consent, and mandatory reporting. This is another one that peer reviewers routinely deduct points for during the peer review process. Having these policies in place not only protects the safety of the victim, but also enhances the working relationship between service providers and increases the delivery of services to victims. Do not assume that peer reviewers will know these policies exist because you are an institution of higher education. They are looking for information that details how victims' data will be protected, how you will obtain consent by best practices in the field, and what your institutional policy is on mandatory reporting. The only way for reviewers to know this is that they read it in your project narrative. The campus program has specific out-of-scope activities that grant funds cannot support. To assist with submitting a solid application, here are a few of the most common ones that have caused applicants to receive point deductions during the review process. Number one, activities primarily focus on sexual harassment that do not involve domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. This out-of-scope activity was updated to reflect that these crimes are now encompassed under sexual harassment in Title IX. It is important to emphasize that activities will focus on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking if you utilize the umbrella term of sexual harassment to represent these crimes. Number two, trainings, conferences, or materials focus primarily on Title IX and not on the crimes themselves. Certainly, campuses can propose policy development and response protocols, including clarifying reporting structures and ongoing trainings to address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking, since they're covered under Title IX. Still, this grant is not intended to support Title IX compliance, and as such, it should not be the primary focus of grant activities. Applications must clearly state that the activities are focused on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Utilizing Title IX as an umbrella term does not necessarily mean that these crimes are being adequately addressed. Number three, purchase of anonymous web-based reporting systems, excluding law enforcement incident report database, or apps for students. Applicants can include reporting systems for law enforcement use or information systems for victim services, as long as the information included can be kept confidential. It is not disclosed without the victim's consent, and victims can opt out of including personally identifiable information. Please review the complete list of out-of-scope activities on page 18 of the notebook before writing to your application to ensure that you do not include any listed activities in your project. Additionally, please note this year is a requirement that applicants certify that grant funds will not be used for out-of-scope activities. We strongly recommend that you carefully review the full list of out-of-scope activities. Unallowable activities costs are listed on page 19, and there are two common unallowable costs seen in proposals. Number one, tuition reimbursement instead of salary for project staff. We often see this for graduate assistant positions. Number two, fundraising. Applicants often include fundraising for the local victim services organization. While we would like to see this type of collaboration between the campus and the community partner, these activities cannot be supported as part of grant-funded events or activities. Next, we will delve into key award information to consider as you develop your proposal. The grant award period is 36 months, beginning on October 1st, 2025, and ending on September 30th, 2028. Applicants should submit applications that include project activities and budgets covering a 3-year period. In FY 2025, awards will be made for up to $400,000 over 36 months. OVW estimates making around 30 awards this year. OVW has the discretion to award amounts greater or less than requested, and to negotiate the scope of work and budget with applicants before making an award. Both new and continuation applications are being accepted. New applicants are those that have never received funding under the campus program as a lead institution or whose previous funding expired on or before June 26, 2024. Continuation applications are those with an existing or recently closed after June 26, 2024 award under this program. Continuation funding is not guaranteed. Recipients of an FY23 or FY24 award under this program are not eligible to apply as the lead applicant or as the partner or subrecipient on an FY 2025 proposal. Likewise, an institution that is a partner or subrecipient on an FY23 or FY24 award under this program is not eligible to apply as the lead applicant or as a partner or subrecipient on an FY 2025 proposal. Please refer to the complete list on page 13 of the notebook for information on the statutory and program requirements. There are 4 statutory requirements that all applicants must certify that they will implement when applying for funding. If you have previously applied or have current funding, please note that these requirements have been updated due to the VAWA 2022 changes. Applicants must create a coordinated community response to address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Establish a mandatory prevention and education program for all students, including training for incoming students, bystander training, and ongoing prevention efforts. Provide ongoing training to all campus law enforcement, and provide ongoing training to all participants in the resolution process, including the campus disciplinary board, the Title IX Coordinator's Office, and the Student Conduct Office. This means that investigators and individuals responsible for appeals and sanctioning must attend. If funded, at the end of your award, you must demonstrate that your campus met these requirements with or without grant funding. Applicants who receive funding under the campus program must engage and meet the following requirements. Next slide. Provide comprehensive, confidential victim services and advocacy. The applicant must offer confidential victim services and advocacy. This requirement is to provide access to 24 confidential victim services and advocacy for survivors of these crimes, regardless of whether the services are located on campus, co-located, or established through a referral relationship with a community partner. Work closely with an OVW technical assistance provider throughout the entire project period. Comply with the staffing and other requirements for new and continuation grantees. Next slide. All applicants must complete the following requirements as well. First, participate in OVW sponsored training and technical assistance, including the new grantee orientation. Number 2, collect and report performance indicators. And number 3, participate in an assessment or evaluation if OVW conducts one that requires recipient involvement. New grantees must engage in a 1-year planning period during which CCR team members will meet regularly to develop a strategic plan, design project implementation, and create prevention programming, training curricula, and protocols. This means that implementation activities cannot be conducted. This is important to consider when developing your budget, as your campus considers activities during the project's implementation phase. These activities should be budgeted for a period of 2 years, not 3. Participate in a mandatory new grantee orientation and annual project director's call. Participate with CCR team members in a minimum of 5 OVW-sponsored TA events, 3 trainings in the first year, 1 training in the second year, and 1 training in the third year. These events should be described in your budget. No more than 3 people should attend the new grantee orientation. Support the project director who is at least 75% full-time employee. During this dedicated period, the project director should focus solely on grant implementation activities. It is the campus discretion whether it wants to support this position at a higher FTE with or without grant funding. Continuation grantees must participate in a mandatory continuation grantee orientation, annual project director's call, and TA institutes as directed by OVW. Implement new project activities in each of the following areas: improving the effectiveness of CCR teams, expanding or strengthening efforts to implement a comprehensive prevention plan, and enhancing campus responses and supports for victims. Support a project director who is at least 0.50% FTE, or provide a justification in the proposal narrative for a project director who is less than 0.50% of their time and engaged in an up to 6-month planning period. Submit an updated strategic plan for OVW review and approval within 6 months after receipt of the award. A project director's primary role in either a new or continuation award is to oversee the project through the planning and implementation phases of the grant, coordinate the work of the CCR team, and ensure that project activities meet stated goals. Considering the scope of work needed for effective implementation and to avoid potential conflicts of interest, the project director must not be a Title IX coordinator, victim advocate, or confidential advisor, and must not be located in or supervised by the Title IX office or any Title IX position. Applications that fail to comply with this requirement will lose points. Now we will discuss eligibility requirements. Eligible applicants are limited to institutions of higher education. OVW is required to ensure equitable distribution of grants to historically Black colleges and universities and tribal colleges and universities. In addition, the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization of 2022 included a 10% set aside for historically Black colleges and universities and a 50% set aside for Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, and HBCUs. A separate NOFO titled Addressing Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking at HBCUs, HSIs, and TCUs initiative addresses these statutory requirements by offering a capacity building program. Please reach out if you have questions about which funding opportunity is right for you. Next slide. All applicants under the campus program must submit certification letters. All letters must be signed on institution letterhead, signed and dated by the highest authorizing official, for example, president, chancellor, provost, or a designee with similar authority of the institution of higher education. As such, it should not be signed by the chief of police or the Title IX office. The president must designate the signatory to sign on behalf of the university for any federal funding. First, the certification regarding out-of-scope activities, second, certification of eligibility, and third, certification of statutory minimum requirements. Failure to provide the certification regarding out-of-scope activities and certification of eligibility letter, or if it includes the incorrect signatures, will disqualify an application from further consideration. The signed certification letter must be uploaded as a separate attachment in Just Grants. If an applicant is proposing to provide legal services as part of the project or victim services that will be provided, a third certification titled Delivery of Legal Assistance must be submitted. Since this is a new requirement due to the VAWA 22, an applicant will not be eliminated during the initial review of the application. However, before an award can be made to an institution, this certification must be submitted. If this certification is missing, OVW will contact the applicant during the review process to request submission of the certification letter. Next slide. There are two required partnerships. Without them, your application will be deemed ineligible and will not move forward with the review process. These partnerships must be reflected in the External Memorandum of Understanding, or EMOU. There must be at least one criminal justice agency, such as a local or tribal law enforcement agency, prosecutor's office, or court. Please note that an applicant with sworn campus law enforcement or campus security officers is still required to partner with a criminal justice agency from the jurisdiction in which the campus is located, and may also partner with additional criminal justice agencies if the applicant chooses. If an applicant has only non-sworn campus law enforcement or security officers, it must partner with a local law enforcement agency and may partner with additional criminal justice agencies if the applicant chooses. And at least one domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking victim service provider within the community or tribe where the institution is located. A victim service provider is a nonprofit, non-governmental, or tribal organization or rape crisis center, including a state or tribal domestic violence and/or sexual assault coalition that assists or advocates for domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking victims, including a domestic violence shelter, faith-based organization, or other organization with documented history of effective work concerning domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Victim services providers must provide direct services to victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking as one of their primary purposes and have a demonstrated history of effective work in this field. Applications that fail to include both types of partners listed above in the EMOU will not be forwarded for peer review and will be removed from further consideration except for applications from TCUs, which may include letters of commitment from required external partners as discussed in the required partnership section. Applicants are also encouraged to include other local entities such as civil legal assistance organizations, mental health providers, or faith-based institutions as additional EMOU partners. Now, we will begin to address key submission information. The cover of the NOFO provides information on registering. Registration includes registering with the Systems for Award Management, SAM, and Grants.gov systems, and registering with Just Grants. All applications must first register with SAM and Grants.gov. Organizations must update or renew their SAM registration at least annually to maintain an active status. The average time to register with SAM is about 2 to 3 weeks. For grants.gov, the average registration time is about 1 week. As such, it is essential to register with both systems as soon as possible to avoid being unable to apply. Registration with both systems must be completed before you can register with Just Grants. Second, applicants must register the entity administrator and the application submitter with Just Grants before the Just Grants deadline. Registration in Just Grants takes about 3 days. Within 24 hours of Just Grants receiving the SF-424 and SF-LLL from grants.gov, the applicant will receive an email from diamond-no-reply@usdoj.gov with instructions on creating a Just Grants account. You can find more registration and deadline information on page 36 of the Notice of Funding Opportunities. It is important to note that there is a two-step submission process. A complete campus program application consists of components that will be submitted in both grants.gov and Just Grants. First, the SF-424 and SF-LLL, which is the disclosure of lobbying, are submitted in grants.gov. The final deadline for submitting these two documents is July 8, 2025 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. If you do not submit these documents in grants.gov by the deadline, you won't be able to submit the remaining components of the application. Please note that this deadline will not be extended, so we kindly request that you submit these initial documents as soon as possible. It is a critical step to completing your application submission. The remaining application documents are submitted to Just Grants. The deadline for submitting the remaining documents in Just Grants is July 10, 2025 by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Once registered in Just Grants, the application submitter will receive an email with a link to complete the remaining application. The entity administrator also needs to log into Just Grants to review and invite the applicant's authorized representative before an application can be submitted. For more information on Just Grants roles, please visit the Just Grants website. Remember to review the checklist on page 36 to ensure you have submitted all required documents before finalizing your submission. Applicants experiencing technical issues with Just Grants should contact the OVW Just Grants support desk immediately. Please ensure that you contact OVW's help desk as provided in this PowerPoint and the NOFO. Another DOJ Just Grants help desk exists, but reaching out to the OVW help desk will better support your ability to submit a timely application. If you experience any technical issues with Just Grants, continue to develop the proposal while working to resolve the problems. Applicants should follow the NOFO guidance on page 36 regarding technical difficulties. This will enable you to submit a full proposal by the deadline using an alternate method if necessary. We will now begin discussing application components. All applications must include the following components: proposal narrative, budget worksheet, and narrative, memoranda of understanding, IMOU and EMOU or LOC, certification of eligibility, certification of statutory minimum requirement, delivery of legal assistance certification if applicable, and certification regarding out-of-scope activities. Please note that an application will not be removed from further consideration if the certification of statutory requirements or delivery of legal assistance letter is missing. However, this must be provided before an award can be received. The summary data sheets provides a brief snapshot of your project. This data is used in the initial review of your application. While this document is not scored and doesn't count towards the 20-page limit, it is important to capture key information about your institution and the proposed project in the summary data sheet. Please ensure you answer all the questions. The proposal narrative consists of 3 sections: the purpose of the proposal, the activities to be undertaken, and the entity responsible for implementation. All combined, the proposal narrative is worth 55 points and is the bulk of the application. The proposal narrative must be double-spaced. This component of the application submission requires applicants to provide detailed information related to the proposed project. Before I delve into each section of the proposal narrative, it is essential to address the page limit. You must be mindful of the formatting. See page 20 for specifics, and the number of allowable pages. The proposal narrative can include single-space charts. However, charts should be used sparingly and should not comprise the majority of the narrative. Peer reviewers must stop reading and scoring this section at the page limit. You do not want to lose valuable points due to going over the page limit. That said, the proposal narrative should be no more than 20 pages. The proposal narrative is designed in the following way. Each section begins with criteria that all applicants must address, followed by criteria that must be addressed based on your applicant type. Next slide. The purpose of the proposal should clearly describe the need of the project and help reviewers understand the specific needs of your campus community. Common mistakes including providing too much information that it is not relevant to the proposed project, or not enough information to be responsive to the request. Follow the guidance on page 23 of the NOFO to ensure you are providing the required information. Also, please note that this section contributes to the page limit. You want to ensure that you are responsive to the questions in this section while also ensuring that you have enough pages remaining to provide detailed information on the proposed project. We have seen applications where the applicant used more pages to describe the need for the project than to describe the project activities. Robust applications find the balance between justifying the need and providing detailed information on how the need will be addressed. Continuation applicants should address the efforts they have made previously to meet the statutory and program requirements, as well as the gaps that remained and or how they plan to build on these previous efforts, thereby seeking funding again. This section is where you will describe how you plan to utilize the grant funds. Awarded applicants will develop a strategic plan during the first year of the award. As such, we have reduced the criteria in this section to key information that we want to know about your project. You should provide detailed information that clearly describes the activities and strategies to support your proposed project. The information provided in this section should be clear and thorough, enabling reviewers to understand how the project will fully address the listed components. For example, there is a difference between stating we offer victim services by partnering with a community victim services organization versus victim services are offered by the X-Rape Crisis Center, which provides crisis intervention, court accompaniment, legal advocacy and representation, safety planning, risk and lethality assessments for domestic violence victims. Next slide. Some common mistakes to avoid in this section are not fully answering the criteria in the proposal. Sometimes applicants will answer only one part of the criteria, resulting in partial credit when assessing your proposal during application review, and not including concrete activities and strategies that will be developed and/or implemented to meet the OVW priority area that the applicant has identified in the summary datasheet section. Next slide. In this section, the applicant should identify the key individuals, departments, and organizations involved in the proposed project. This section does not list all of the partners involved in this project. All partners should be reflected in the Memoranda of Understanding, or EMOUs. This section must demonstrate that the individuals, departments, and organizations identified can address the stated need and can successfully implement the proposed project activities. Therefore, providing details on their expertise and experience is critical here. Additionally, specify the roles of each organization and individual in the project. If you plan to hire for one of the key positions, provide a brief description of the experience you hope they have and the position's responsibilities. You will find criteria in this section regarding the commitment, dedicated time, and use of the project supervisor's position to obtain leadership buy-in and support for the project activities. We have found that the project supervisor is equally vital in ensuring the successful launch and continued progress of the project. As a friendly reminder, this section also contributes to the page limit. Ensure that this section focuses on who is involved in the major project activities and who is primarily responsible for ensuring that the proposed project goals and objectives are met. The most significant common mistake is the lack of details regarding the demonstrated experience and expertise of key personnel, including the failure to provide the roles and expertise of individual personnel, departments, and organizations in this section, instead relying on the MOU. Applicants may miss receiving points in this section because the required information is included in the MOU instead of the project narrative. As a result, the points associated with the criteria in this section will not be applied if the information is located elsewhere. Applicants will submit a budget attachment within Just Grants. We are not using the web-based budget as we have in previous years. During the peer review process, reviewers will assess and score the budgets to ensure that the program requirements are met and that they do not include any unallowable activities and/or expenses. It is the applicant's responsibility to read this section thoroughly to ensure a proper budget is submitted. Applicants must submit reasonable budgets based on the resources needed to implement their proposed project. The budget should clearly link the specific project activities to the proposed budget items. Specifically, the budget should not contain any items not detailed in the project narrative. The budget narrative must support all costs included in the budget and explain how the cost of goods and services are determined, as well as how they will contribute to fulfilling the project's overall objective. The budget must reflect 36 months of project activity. Funds should be included to attend mandatory campus program training and technical assistance in the amount of $60,000 with an additional $10,000 added for applicants from the U.S. territories, Alaska, or Hawaii. Applicants may include more than the minimum amount. It should also include 20% or more of funding if proposing to develop a victim service program. It should not contain a match, and it should not exceed the budget caps. When developing the budget, applicants should ensure that all project partners are financially compensated for participating in any project-related activities, including but not limited to compensation for time and travel expenses incurred during project development, training, and implementation. The budget must include compensation for all services rendered by project partners, including the victim service provider. If a partner is a state, local, tribal, or territorial agency, and the partnership duties are conducted within the course of the agency's regular scope of work, the applicant does not need to compensate the partner if an explanation of this agreement is included in the budget and external memorandum of understanding. In the budget, the applicant should include the narrative that no compensation from the grants will be used. The budget should also include funds to ensure project activities and materials are accessible to individuals with disabilities and students with limited English proficiency. For example, videos could be closed captioned and translated into other languages. Written materials could be translated into various languages, and interpreters could be made available at events and/or during the provision of direct victim services for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing or who speak a language other than English. Please refer to pages 25 through 28 of the NOFO, which provide detailed information on developing and submitting your proposal, including your budget. Additionally, the OVW website provides a budget sample for your reference. Please note that this sample is used for all OVW programs and therefore may include items that are not allowable for this specific program. Still, it is a good reference for organizing your budget, providing clear computations, and demonstrating detailed justification for all proposed expenses. Indirect costs under the campus program are limited to no more than 20% of modified total direct cost. This limit applies to both direct recipients and subrecipients of campus program funds. New applicants must have and/or support at least one project director position at 75 FTE. Continuation applicants should allocate at least 0.50% FTE for the project director. However, if you want to allocate less time, a justification must be provided if the project director's time is less than 50% to ensure the project can adequately implement and it is not hindered by the reduced time. All campus program grantees will be required to attend 5 training and technical assistance institutes over the 3-year grant period. As such, we require applicants to set aside a minimum of $60,000 to attend these mandatory trainings. There will be 3 institutes in the first year, 1 in the second year, and 1 in the last year of the award. All grantees are required to bring a multidisciplinary team to the institutes. The institutes are designed for grantees to work in teams and develop the competencies necessary to implement program activities on their campuses. Since trainings will occur across the U.S., applicants can use DC as their base site for cost calculations if needed. Typically, the budget is for 4 nights of hotel stay. For the NGO or new grantee orientation, there are 2 to 3 people who can attend. For the training institutes, 6 to 7 people are required for the first 3 trainings, and 4 people are required to attend the last 2 trainings. If you propose to develop, implement, or strengthen victim services, the budget should include 20% of grant funds dedicated to that activity. It must be allocated for direct services to survivors and cannot include outreach and training activities. If you propose a needs assessment or evaluation of efforts, you are limited to no more than 3% of your budget for this purpose. Lastly, a friendly word of advice. Please do not divide grant funding by year. This format creates additional challenges when activities span multiple grant years, which is often the case, and require approval from OVW to update the budget. Again, my best advice is to follow the sample budget provided to applicants. Next slide. Applicants must submit 2 memorandums of understanding, MOUs. First, an internal MOU and an external MOU. Each MOU must represent a commitment to the full length of the project, which is 36 months. The MOUs must be developed at the time of the proposal. Therefore, they cannot be based on an existing memorandum of understanding. Signatures should be continuous and can be on multiple pages. The MOUs must be currently dated. Only TCUs can submit letters of support instead of a memorandum of understanding. Next slide. The internal MOU represents the relationship between all campus partners. It should provide information on confidentiality and privilege restrictions for each partner, describe how each partner would contribute to the project, and address how privacy and informed consent will be used to ensure victim confidentiality. Next slide. The external memorandum of understanding represents the relationship between the campus and external partners. It should provide a description of information sharing, confidentiality, and privilege restrictions for each partner, address how privacy and informed consent will be used, describe the resources that each partner would contribute to the project, and identify a mechanism for reimbursement to all partners. The EMOU must include, at a minimum, both the external victim services organization and the criminal justice partner. Next slide. Instead of reviewing everything that must be included in the MOU, we will provide you with some examples of common mistakes to help you avoid them. There is no page limit for the MOUs, so there is no reason to shorten the details required for each criteria. Missing signatures, especially the signatures of the required partners. Every person and organization listed in the MOU must sign the MOU to be bound by its terms. Submitting outdated or existing MOUs that are not developed based on this project, including a clause that partners may withdraw from this project at any time. This raises concerns about the partner's commitment to the project. Next slide. OVW recognizes that some tribal colleges and universities may be unable to obtain a signed EMOU between the posting of the NOFO and the application submission deadlines. To address this challenge, OVW will provide TCUs with the option to submit letters of commitment or LOCs instead of the EMOU. TCUs can submit an LOC from the mandatory criminal justice agency partner and an LOC from the mandatory victim service provider that has the primary purpose of assisting Native victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. The LOCs should include, number one, a statement of the partner's commitment to the success of the project for the entire award period, including their participation in their CCR team. Number two, a description of the roles and responsibilities that the partner will play in the implementation of the project. Number three, a description of the resources that partner would contribute to the project, either through time, in-kind contributions, or other resources, for example, office space, project staff, and training. Number four, a description of any limitation on information sharing, as well as confidentiality and privilege restrictions for each partner, and state that each partner understands the limits on disclosure of personally identifiable information under BAWA. Please see the confidentiality notice form. And number five, a description of how privacy and informed consent will be used to ensure that victim confidentiality is maintained to the extent legally possible. TCU applicants who are selected must submit a signed EMOU by the end of the planning period. Next slide. The common mistakes we observe on LOCs are the same as those on MOUs. Next slide. The following few slides are provided by the Grants Financial Management Division, also known as GFMD, within OVW, which offers additional information on the NOFO's financial requirements. In the next couple of slides, we will focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents reviewed by our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior years' applications that could help with expediting our review process. Today, we will highlight specific aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the summary datasheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, two items that we should like to discuss are the single audit response and the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement indicating whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their most recent fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of this information. Please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety on the summary data sheet, question number 3. Another item that we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you are required to provide a disclosure letter. Please refer to the NOFO for further details and a link to a sample letter. Note that there are 4 required parts of this disclosure letter. The sample letter provided outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure, so please follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item that we'd like to discuss is the pre-award risk assessment questions, which assist GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the question, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant, and which may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues we've encountered include, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do intend have internal policies, but they fail to provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budget versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but in general, please ensure that you read each question carefully and provide a full and comprehensive response. Next slide. This slide highlights some resources available as you create the budget to be submitted with your application. Next slide. We understand that this can be a lot of information to process. If you have any questions about the GFMD information discussed, please don't hesitate to contact the GFMD Help Desk at 888-514-8556 or via email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Next slide. As we approach the end, we have some tips that may enhance your chances of becoming a campus grant recipient. Please note that the following list is not a guarantee that your project will be funded. However, it is intended to help you submit a strong and responsive application. Read the NOFO. As we have mentioned previously, the applicant must read the NOFO in its entirety. Everything that needs to be included in or with your application is outlined in the NOFO, and any supporting resources are linked or referenced accordingly. For an application to be considered eligible and complete and move to the next level of review process, it must include the following: 2 certification letters, both required partners, a project narrative, a budget detail worksheet and narrative, and 2 memorandums of understanding. MOUs that do not contain any signatures are considered incomplete. Be sure that your project strategies and activities address the areas you have identified as being the purpose of the application. A robust application is focused on the crimes, the campus needs, and the populations that will be served. It is acceptable for projects to focus on a single crime. It does not increase your chances of being awarded a grant by stating that you will address every crime if your project narrative only provides information on how you will address sexual assault. Use the application checklist on page 36 of the NOFO. This checklist will help you ensure that all required documents are included in your application when you begin submitting. OVW will not reach out for any missing documents except for the delivery of legal assistance certification and/or the certification to implement the statutory minimum requirements letter. Nor we will not review documents outside of the final Just Grants submissions unless you are approved to apply an alternate method. Additionally, once you apply through Just Grants, you cannot submit another application. Allow plenty of time to gather the required information. And to avoid any possibility of missing the submission deadline, Submit your application as far in advance of the deadline as possible. Technical issues may arise, and the number of individuals seeking assistance from just grants is likely to increase around the submission date. Next slide. Ensure the application is easy to read and follow for all reviewers. One way to assist the review is to use the heading and subheading titles in the NOFO for each section. Be sure the application and responses to the program requirements and expectations are complete and clearly written. Avoid or limit the use of acronyms. Remember that the reviewers are not familiar with your campus and may not be familiar with the acronyms used by your campus and project partners. Print out the application before submitting it to ensure it is formatted correctly and adheres to the page limit requirements. Also, number the pages in your application. This will also help the reviewer track and ensure you follow the NOFO formatting and instructions. If your name and contact information are listed as the point of contact or application submitter, please monitor your inbox. There are times when grants.gov and Just Grants may reject your application, and you will need to ensure you receive those alerts. Thank you so much for your time today and for your interest in the OVW campus program.